stormy rain. In the midst of it all, though we stumble and fall, we should rise again. Sometimes you feel despair. Just know that God is still standing there, saying we shall overcome someday. Oh, come on, somebody sing it. Oh, we shall. Let it ring out that we shall. Yeah, someday. Yeah. I know it gets hot sometimes. Yeah, we shall overcome someday.
Welcome to Rainbow Push. Welcome to the Rainbow Push Coalition. We are broadcasting live from 930 East 50th Street. We're on the Impact Word Network. We are live streaming on Facebook. We're on live stream. We're on whatever platform that you are available. Just go to rainbowpush.org and you can click on Facebook and you can connect to us. You can do live stream from rainbowpush.org. You can call us right now at 773-256-2775. Wherever you are in the world, you can call us, connect to us. You can follow us on Twitter. You can friend us on Facebook. We have a Power Pack program here for you today. We want to remind you that May 17th, we are holding a major Push for Excellence Education Summit right here in Chicago as we move from the focus on race segregation to resource segregation. We're going to talk about that. We have Nicole Hannah-Jones will be keynoting our luncheon that day. We have Judge Mathis will be hosting a major corporate breakfast as we look at how little access we have to the corporate dollars for education. We'll be talking about resource segregation in public and private education, resource segregation in higher education, tuition increasing, nothing changing on the schools but the amount of money students go into debt. We're going to look at debt-free education, or at least elimination of student loan debt, on May 17th here in Chicago at Roosevelt University. And then we're pushing you towards our convention June the 28th through July 2nd. You can go to rainbowpush.org and register today. Reverend Jackson's going to walk through in great detail every day of the convention for you. We start on Friday, June 28th with labor and education, and we end with a major BET town hall. We want to congratulate Butch Wing, a director of our Silicon Valley project, and his wife Jeannie on becoming for the first time grandparents, and so we salute them. Also, we have our Silicon Valley project, Push Tech 2020, will be held in Silicon Valley on May 30th and May 31st. We're praying for one of our Latino partners, Dr. Juan Andrade. He's the co-founder and president of the United States Hispanic Leadership Institute. We're praying for members of our Push family, Sarah Riggins, one of our faithful choir members, and Vern Rose, who are struggling with recovery at this time. Keep them in your prayers. And now for what's happened in the Weekend Review, we want you to tune in and watch now our Weekend Review video.
Resurrection Sunday began with the devastating news of the coordinated bombing attacks in Sri Lanka, leaving 253 people dead while attending Sunday services in churches and hotels. We continue to pray for the families of the victims and for Sri Lanka. Our Push Excel HBCU tour students enthusiastically returned from visiting 7 HBCUs, attending 2 corporate activities and 3 cultural and historical activities in celebration and wonder. Their minds and possibilities were expanded as several students were accepted into HBCUs of their choice. What an experience. Many chanted for sure, "I am somebody." We chronicled their successes during the HBCU debriefing, where chaperones and parents supporters marveled at the benefits of this priceless tour. Reverend Jesse Jackson attended, citing the myriad reasons support is needed. And speaking of the power and value of HBCUs, we congratulate and salute the 2019 National Teacher of the Year, Rodney Robinson, who selflessly gives students at Virgie Benford Education Center a lesson in never being too late to be what they could have been. And guess what? He's a proud graduate of Virginia State University.
I was always taught to pay it forward and bring it down to the next generation, from my mother to Virginia State University. Those are the things that I was taught, and so I always put that into my students.
We have many voting matters, good news and not so good news. Officials in Grand Rapids, Michigan want to make illegal to call 911 on people of color who are just living their lives. Kansas has signed a bill to make voting easier in the state.
We're hopeful that overall this will just be a very positive experience for voters, make it much more convenient for voters to cast their ballot.
A federal court unanimously struck down legislative maps drawn by Michigan Republicans, finding that they were guilty of deliberately discriminating against Democratic voters.
It will bring a greater sense of fairness to our elections. I mean, clearly nationwide, it's been a major problem for a long time. And if we do get to the point with having fairer districts, I think the public is going to feel that their elections are going to be more fairly conducted.
The Tennessee Senate approved a controversial bill that would subject paid voter registration drives to fine and criminal penalties. Brazenly undermining the will of 64% of votes who blocked Amendment 4, Florida passes a modern-day poll tax that would disenfranchise over 1 million people who are set to have voting rights restored.
You know, what's lost in this is that, you know, especially when you get into partisan politics, people think that maybe the lives of people who are Democrats are affected. No, the lives of all Americans are affected.
And what about the 2020 contenders? Joe Biden announced his bid for the President of the United States.
I believe history will look back on 4 years of this president and all he embraces as an aberrant moment in time.
Elizabeth Warren wants to cancel student loans and offer free college plans, and rolls out plan to reward hospitals that make childbirth safer for African American women. Who's the boss? Our president and founder, Reverend Jesse Jackson, trekked to Atlanta, Georgia to attend SunTrust Bank's shareholders meeting, pitching a plan for bank fines to aid consumers. Did you watch PBS? The Boss? The Black Experience? Exploring the stories of enterprising African Americans, bringing to the forefront the history of our entrepreneurship. Directed by award-winning filmmaker Stanley Nelson, our very own Reverend Jesse Jackson is mentioned along with Chicago's John H. Johnson of Johnson Publishing Company. And speaking of boss moves, businesswoman Melody Hobson and husband and filmmaker George Lucas seek to acquire Ebony and Jet Magazine's photographic archives. And with Quinny Williams going third overall to the Jets, agent Nicole Lynn becomes the first black female agent to represent a first-round pick in the NFL draft. Read and share widely the Chicago Sun-Times column written by Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr., Trump Plunges U.S. Deeper into Forgotten Wars.
Join the movement. Join Rainbow Push.
As you look at the week in review and you understand the variety of issues that we are supporting, I know you want to invest in us. I know you want to support the movement. I know you can't be everywhere that Reverend Jackson is. I know you can't be everywhere that Dr. Todd Yeary is. I know you didn't go on the bus with us, but you can get a jacket and it'll look like you were there. You can support us. Get your Push Excel gear now. You can get a jacket, you get a t-shirt for every day. You can get a membership. Membership is only $35 a year, $15 for students and seniors. Everybody should have a push card because we are pushing for you. Pushing is what we do. Serving you is what we do absolutely best. And now every week we have and feature one of our young people who are in our oratorical competition. They are learning how to speak and project. And here we have with us today Miss Allison Felder. She's a fifth grader. She's here all the way from Detroit, Michigan, from the Fisher Elementary School. Won't you greet warmly Miss Allison Fisher, and following her, the choir will come in their own way to present our national president and founder, the one and only Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson. Greet Allison.
Good morning. Today I will be reciting a collaboration of themes. One by T.L. Cherry, Freedom Ain't Free. Freedom ain't free. The price is pretty steep. The cost to be free didn't come cheap. Some paid the price with mental and physical abuse. But for some, ooh, the price was the most horrific abuse. For others, it was a march holding a picket sign. For some, it was jail and paying a fine. But for many, freedom came at a much, much higher price. The price to be free cost them their life. They died so we wouldn't have to suffer the same abuse and neglect. They died so we would be able to walk tall with pride and respect. So when you decide not to read any book ever wrote, when you decide not to exercise your right to vote, when you set out to succeed but fall short on success, when you don't try again because you just settled for less, when you don't get back up when you get knocked down, when you lie there feeling sorry for yourself with your face to the ground, when you're down on your knees and don't stand to your feet, when you don't fight back but accept defeat, when you quit midstream instead of going all the way, when you just don't feel like giving it your all that day, when you fail to be all that you can be, just remember that freedom ain't never been free. To all the civil rights leaders that fought for our freedom, we have to say thank you. And like my pastor, the Reverend Dr. Charles G. Adams, I too wish I had 10,000 tons just to say thank you. If I were Chinese, I'll say Odia. If I were Danish, I'll say mango tot. If I were Italian, I'll say grazia. If I were Hebrew, I'll say toda rabbi. If I were Greek, I'll say eucharisto. If I were Portuguese, I'll say obligato. If I were Spanish, I'll say muchas gracias. If I were German, I'll say dankeschön. If I were French, I'll say merci beaucoup. If I were Russian, I'll say spasiba. If I were Kenyan, I'll say ashanta. If I were Nigerian, I'll say Eshe Poo-Poo. If I were Zitsu, I'll say India Boga. If I were back in the 80s, I'll say good looking out. And if I were deaf, I would say, but since I am who I am, and we got what we got, and we feel just how we feel, we just have to say thank you for all they have done and all they are still doing. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Come on, sing with us. Hey, hey. Oh, y'all sing it with us. Oh, I am somebody. Oh, I am somebody. Hey. In of this day, you can try to walk away, but I am somebody.
Red and yellow, brown, black, and white. We're all precious in God's sight. Everybody is somebody. Stop the violence. Save the children. Stop the violence. Save the children. Keep hope alive. Never surrender. Keep hope alive. Forward by hope. Never backwards. by fear. Keep hope alive. I am somebody. I am somebody.
Somebody. Oh, I am. God made it. At the end of this day, you can try to walk away, but guess what I am? Look at your neighbor and say, neighbor, God made it, so I am. Yeah. At the end of this day, try to walk away and say, I am somebody.
Let's hear Brother Mehan. Let's hear Brother Mehan. We have a lot of ground to cover today, and I want to express my thanks to God for being home again today. Tomorrow at Fellowship, Reverend Al Sharpton will be speaking. 8 and 10 and 12 tomorrow at Fellowship. Reverend Al, tonight he's doing a tremendous MSNBC program, Black and White. You don't want to miss that program tonight by Reverend Al Sharpton. I want to thank Bishop Horace Smith for helping to host our convention at Apostolic. We'll talk more about that today. A big hand for Bishop. Butch and Jean Wing are now grandparents. Give them a hand. We're moving toward May and June and graduation time. Every high school senior, age 18, will be 18 by November, is eligible to register and vote now. You come across the stage with a plume in one hand and a voter card in the other. In Chicago alone, there may be 7,000 high school seniors. Whether you're in high school or not, say if I'm age 18, older, or be 18 by November 6th, I have the right to register and vote now. I will vote. I don't like cutting taxes for the rich, cutting health care for the poor, raising the cost of education. I intend to vote. Put your hands together, let's vote. All you teachers who are watching our program today across the nation, this is you convene seniors for the prom. You convene them for various activities as seniors. You convene them and get a registrar. Register them that should come across with a sense of citizenship, a sense of responsibility and power. I urge you to do that. Also, if you're not a member of Rainbow Push, I want you to join today. For joining online, right here, we need volunteers to be a part of our membership drive. You'll hear more about our convention, June 28th to July the 2nd. I want to do something different right now. Sister Maya, come up here. Maya's mother. Andrew Braxton and your husband, come up here, Brother Braxton. They are from Mississippi. A little white boy was run over and killed. And that little boy, because he was killed coming off a school bus, they gave the killer 22 years, called Nathansville. Her child was coming off of a school bus. The woman was driving on the wrong side of the road. And you have to stop sign and kill that child. They not even convened a message from the attorney. We intend to work with them. We've asked them. They drove up here all night long from Mississippi. All night. See, Mississippi is still hell. But we got the water to fight back. We'll put out the fire. We will win Mississippi. We'll win Mississippi. We will not give up till there's justice in Mississippi. I want Sister Braxton to tell us her story about her daughter. Then I want Reverend Darius Brooks to sing My Will, then I'll move on. Sister Braxton.
I thank you so much for this opportunity. This is a story that I have told many, many times. It's not an easy story to tell, but it must be told. On October the 4th, 2016, my daughter Maya was getting off her school bus. Her and her brother, behind me, LaMathion. They were getting off their school bus, an ordinary day. I was at home asleep. And I get a phone call from my husband, who is Charles, who's behind me, saying, "Where are you?" I said, "I'm at home in bed like I told you I would be." He said, my phone has been ringing nonstop, and people are calling me, telling me that Amaya has been hit by a car. I said, that's impossible. I was in denial and in disbelief, but nevertheless, it was true. I get in the ambulance with my baby in the back, dead and lifeless. I go to a hospital where I'm put in a room by myself until family can arrive, just to find out that a careless driver ran over her while she was exiting her bus, came over to the side that she was getting off on into her yard and killed her dead in her driveway in front of her brother. I waited patiently, for our justice system to do something in Pontotoc County. I decided that I was not going to be angry and I was going to let the law do what it was supposed to do. But I waited 2 years, and there's been several same instances, and everybody has been able to get justice except for Amaya. There is a law that says you cannot pass the stop school bus. She passed the stop school bus. It doesn't matter if she intended to do it or not, she done it. And by the law, she's guilty. And only thing that I want is justice for my baby. And I have been fighting with my mind and not with my hands. I have took anger out in a positive way and not in a negative way. But I'm here to stand up and let Pontotoc County know that we will not go away. We are not going to stop fighting. Right is right and wrong is wrong. It's not an issue of whose child it was. It's an issue that it was somebody's child. And our lives matter. And Amaya's life mattered to me. She was going to be an impact to the world. And even in her death, she's impacting lives every day. I am here standing with all you lovely people, and y'all are listening to my story. So I ask y'all to help us fight. Spread this story. Share the post. Everything matters. Every word, every encouraging word matters to us. Thank you so much for your time.
On your feet, put your hand together. Bishop Grant is going down to Mississippi. Reverend Todd Yeary, we're going to Mississippi, so we're going to fight in the courts and the streets and march till something happens. If you're facing a Christ, call us at 773-FREEDOM this week. And Johnny Sabre, give Johnny, but Johnny, you did a yeoman's job on this. I want the Reverend to give a song of dedication now to this family.
Wish I can tell you just what I want, and you give it to me just like that. The truth of the matter, what I want just might hurt me, and you won't let me go out like that, Lord. You know my end before my beginning, and it's calculated blessings down to the penny. So Lord, I'll work till you tell me to let it go, let it be. You found out the way you got this thing, you will. Lord, it's what's best for me. No rubies and no diamonds and no silver, oh, no pearls. I found this out, y'all. There are some lessons that I that I wouldn't trade in for this world. You told me that my trials, they only come to make me strong. Anybody ever told God that? And with this you promised that while I'm dealing with this thing, God, you wouldn't leave me alone. So I cry. Yeah, I'm gonna cry till you tell me to let it go, let it be. Cause oh Lord, my Lord, your will, your will, your will, your will, your will, your word. Good God Almighty, and it's gonna last. Yes, it will. And family, God's got your future. Yes, He does, like He brought us out of our past. Yeah, there are times that I cannot see, but I know that I know that I know it's so. I found out that God loves me more. God loves me more. God loves me more than I'll ever know. Yeah, I'm gonna fight him, but I'm gonna let it go. Yeah, yeah, because I know that when I put it in God's hand, Lord, your will, your will, your will, your will, your will, your will, your word. Yeah, good God Almighty, and it's gonna last. Yes, it will. And I'm glad that God's got the future. Yes, He will, like He's brought us out of our past. And here's my story right here. I love this part right here. There are times I cannot see, but I know that God loves me so. He don't want to let nothing happen to me. He loves me more. Yeah. He loves me more than I'll ever know. So Lord, I'm going to let your will be done. I'll put it in your hands. Yes, I will. And when I do this, oh Lord, yes, it will. Your will be done for me. And it's what's best for me.
Reverend Darius Brooks, Reverend Darius Brooks. Braxton family know that we're with you. Talk with Bishop Henry Williamson to CMB Church. He's going down to the county. Reverend Bishop Grant, Reverend Todd Yeary. So we are going to Mississippi to get justice for Amaya. You know, God can even speak from the grave. I asked Mrs. Parks, when I said, Mrs. Parks, why didn't you go to the back of the bus? You could have been run over. She said, you know, I wanted to go to the back, but I thought about Emmett Till, I couldn't go back. I said, God has a way of speaking to us, even from the grave. Unearned suffering is redemptive. Briefly before I bring on Reverend Todd Yeary today, I want you who are watching us today in radio land, TV land, the broadcast today, convention June 28th through July the 2nd. All roads lead to 2020. We face Trump head to head. You know, we used to be asked, as they said in biblical time, to make brick without straw, or to be in democracy without the vote. That we can make bricks with straw, and we can vote. Don't let Trump's bluffs threaten you. He lost by 3 million votes in 2016. He lost by 9 million votes in 2018. So we will Trump. And so the convention is about bringing our forces together to engage in a massive battle. On the 28th of June, we'll have a labor luncheon. The president of the International Painting Union will be there, along with Joe Biden and others of them on that day. Workers Truck brag about how many workers are working. If you're working and can't send your child to school, if you're working and can't afford health care, they had full-time employment in slavery. Everybody was working. They couldn't make enough money to survive. That's the thrust of the labor luncheon. That night, education. 54 decisions designed to break up segregation by race. Now segregation by resource. They base it on tax base, not the integral rights of the child. So you have an inner city high school and 5 miles away suburban in some suburb, and 2 levels of education. One goes to jail, one goes to school. So that night, on Saturday, we're going to meet at 39th and Indiana, Reverend Bishop Horace Smith Church, Apostolic Church, on that Saturday, a massive meeting as we lay out a plan to fight for the fall. And at 2 o'clock, we're going to the DeSalle Museum that day and have us a family affair festival with some other political speakers on that occasion. On Sunday night, we're having our Clay Evans Gospel Festival at Apostolic. We're going downtown as little as we can and invest where we live as much as we can. Put your hands together. On Monday morning will be our health luncheon. More and more black women are having babies through C-sections, and they're dying more. Infant mortality 6.5 times that of white women because of race discrimination in the health services. Noontime will be the women's luncheon. We expect Alexander Cortez to be there. Honoring mayors from Charlotte and New Orleans and Washington and New Orleans. And we're honoring black males around the nation in Atlanta who represent the best in us. The Attorney General of New York, Letice James, she is over the Trump money factory in New York. We'll have a lot to say about that. At noontime, the women's luncheon. That night, a sports affair, a banquet. Tuesday morning, we'll have our business breakfast. We'll have several major bankers speaking at it. We seek a different distribution of capital. And that night, we're going to have a luncheon. We're having a minister's luncheon that day. And we're also going to have that night a BET. We're going to do a town hall meeting 400 years later. Say 400 years later. We came in 1619. Where are we 400 years later? And I want to thank God for those of you who are participating. It's $50 to register. For the come by and register today. But also get involved. We need volunteers to make it work. We're in Chicago. Our brothers and sisters, dog bite us. We bleed everywhere. There was a time if we got hurt in Mississippi, Chicago rallied. More blacks in Chicago are from Mississippi and live in Mississippi. So if families from Mississippi come and ask for help, so we will give this family, the Braxtons, help and visibility. We'll fight for them, stand for them until justice for Amaya. Put your hands together again. Reverend Todd Yeary of Douglas Memorial Church in Baltimore, Maryland, who is our vice president, who has been working steadily between Chicago and Baltimore on our work, will come bring our message for today. I want you who are listening to call right now, 773-256-2775, 753-256-2775, or 773. We need volunteers. Don't be on the sideline. Get involved. Make it. Reverend Todd Yeary, come forward, will you please?
In a moment of a reality check, having heard from the Braxton family about an unthinkable pain and an unyielding commitment, we have been granted sacred privilege to walk with those who hurt, not simply to offer simple words with little substance, but to say to this mother, this father, these siblings, you will not stand alone nor fight alone. What hurts one of us hurts all of us. When one cries, we're all burdened with the source of the grief. Too often we make our politics about personality. Our politics is really about policy. What we've heard is that there is still a policy disparity in America. Justice means something different depending on who's making the claim or the demand. If we're not careful, we'll get caught up in the frenzy of a personality contest presented to us like it's pageantry. Well, we didn't survive 400 years because we went to a pageant. We survived 400 years because we went to the streets, we went to the state houses, we went to the court steps, and yes, sometimes we even had to go to the grave. If we get caught up in the trite and trivial discussions about reckless behavior that we all know it when we see it, and think that somehow or other a special counsel can be the proxy for the people, it's time for the people to rise up again. And when we talk about rising up, this is the season of resurrection. We just preached about in churches and temples and during Passover how God, through the power that is beyond our ability to see in real time, does from the invisible that which affects everything that we do see. That Sunday morning when Mary goes to the tomb thinking she's going to attend to the body of Jesus, her concern was, in some gospel renditions, who's going to move the obstacle between us and Jesus out of the way? That's still the relevant question for us today. There's an obstacle between us and the righteousness of God expressed in God's Son. And the question is, who's going to roll the stones of injustice away? There's an intentionality in our government that some lives just don't matter. Earlier this week, one of the co-conspirators that coaxed James Byrd into a truck 20 years ago, then tied him to the back of the truck's bumper and dragged him through the streets till his body exploded, met the punishment of the government. But the problem is, the same government that punished them won't punish him. Y'all ain't talking to me. Which says there's something still wrong with the system that requires that we who stand with mothers and fathers who mourn their children, that we should not get a pass simply because it ain't our problem and it ain't our child. Every child in our community belongs to every one of us, and until we defend their life and their death, we face a certain judgment when we come into the presence of God. This really isn't about whether or not the president is going to hell. I can't make that judgment. though I have some ideas. This is about whether we will go to hell because we were the perpetrators of indifference and silence, complicit behavior, and lack of empathy. If we're really going to walk in this season where we claim the very power of God to conquer the grave, we ought to at least act like we can still get close to that power. I want to talk to you just for a moment today because Paul writes in 1 Corinthians 15 that if there is no resurrection, we've been wasting our time. Paul says what we've been preaching and proclaiming about love for neighbor and love for self, it is absolutely empty in terms of its substance. If there is no resilience tied to the human spirit, then Jesus becomes just another random character, another brother that the government didn't necessarily like. And I know many of us grew up in houses where we had the velvet picture of the image of somebody's relative and they claimed it to be Jesus. The truth of the matter is that the historical Christ looked like many of those that we continue to look the other way when they are abused by the government, tried in unjust systems, buried in tombs because they can't pay the funeral costs, no insurance policies to take care of the survivors. There is no resurrection. We are actually now permanent victims to our plight in America. That while our ancestors came over on boats simply because our circumstances look differently, our status is still the same. If I were to have a real conversation with you today, this isn't about who you like, who you don't like, especially when you don't vote. Doesn't really matter. If you're not registered, your opinion gets cast over to the side with all of the other irrelevant ideas that can never be acted upon. If you don't have the audacity to at least show up at the voting place and stand as long as is necessary, then you become another one that is pimping the legacy of the civil rights movement because too many people had to die and spend nights in jail for us to be able to have the luxury that our feet are too tired to stand in line until we stand up for justice. My maternal grandparents, Mamie and Robbie Gordon. I'm told that my grandfather, who died the year before I was born, had about a 4th grade education. First time I ever saw a real photo of him, 2 things caught me. One was his size. He was a rather petite man. His suit was too big. When I realized the sleeves on his suit coat were too long, Reverend, I looked at his hands. And his hands reflected the struggle, the hard work, the sacrifice that he made to raise 10 children, one of them my mama. My grandmother, slightly more advanced than my grandfather, had a 6th grade education, and her job was to nurture. They sent their children, whether they went to the military or to college, they came out, raised their families, had grandchildren. I am among them. What am I saying to you? There are some who aren't with us anymore. When we look at our hands, we don't see the scars. We don't see the calluses. But it doesn't mean that there was no work that was required to get us where we are. Who's going to roll the stone away? Somebody that's got hands strong enough, sturdy enough to dare touch the stone. You can't have soft hands and not touch the stone. Who's going to roll away the stone in the midst of a budget that's being proposed that is so hostile that they're cutting 9% across the board from non-military spending, raising military spending by 5%, and the places that they're cutting starts with how we take care of our seniors. How do we raise the issue? This isn't about whether or not the president would fire a lawyer that works for him. That's not what this is about. This is about whether or not we will let the president intentionally ignore the needs of the elderly, the needs of the poor, the needs of the uneducated. This is about who will hold a man accountable. Can I talk to you for a moment? He's just a man. Got to put his pants on like everybody else. He got some security, but tell your neighbor we got security too. We have a secret service assigned by God. I believe it's written somewhere that goodness and mercy will follow us all the days of our lives. He ain't the only one that's got some backup. Why are we afraid of the government? That was the issue on that Friday when they executed the brother in the middle of the daytime and then had another brother carry his cross and then had another brother put up the tomb. There's something about the breadth of black suffering. And it ought not be that those who are well-meaning amongst us of different communities, it don't exclude you just because it don't touch you. The last time I checked, poverty was a condition, not a color. There are poor people in rural America. There are poor people in urban America. There are poor people in suburban America. Poverty is a condition. There are poor black people, and there are poor white people, and there are poor brown people, and there are poor yellow people. Y'all ain't talking to me. And so in the midst of this, instead of talking about poverty, the president, the man in the White House, wants to get more money to build a wall to keep folks out that they don't want in. Can I just say to you this thing parenthetically for those of us who are recognizers of history? If I were to have a conversation with the family members that many black people say we got some of that in us, it ain't just some folks running for president who claim they have some affinity with the indigenous communities called the Indians. But can I talk to you for a minute? If you were going to build a wall, you should have built it about 1619. You 400 years late on this exercise. And now that you've come in and used force and your own legal entitlement to displace folks, it does not mean that those of us who have been acted upon have nothing at our disposal that we can do. When I saw my grandfather's hands, I saw his hands representative of determination. We're determined not to let this government sleep on the needs of our people. The needs of our people are not just unique to our people, other folks suffer too. And so when we raise the aspirational issues of communities of color, it makes all of America better. So when we go to Mississippi, we can go today if we need to go. If I were to talk to you for a moment, there was a time before we could get on airplanes and fly all over the country. I was born in Augusta, Georgia. Mama used to put us on the bus Sometimes we'd ride in the car before we'd get ready to take the trip. She would go in the kitchen. She would take a whole chicken. Y'all ain't talking to me. We ain't go in and buy no pieces. Take a whole chicken, Reverend, cut it up, dip it in flour, fry it up a little bit, take the loaf of bread, y'all ain't talking back to me, off the refrigerator. Some folks had Wonder Bread. It was a wonder that we had bread, not Wonder Bread. We take the chicken and set it in a slice of bread so that the bread became the substitute for the paper towel to soak the grease out, because you couldn't necessarily drain it nowhere. Am I talking all right? And then she would wrap it up and put it in the car, and while we were moving, we sustained ourselves off of, here's the word, preparation. Ask your neighbor, are you ready for the road trip toward justice? Are you ready to get on the road and go fight wherever the fight takes you? Are you ready to go stand in the gap wherever the gap exists? Because we've got work to do. Can I get a witness here? And I just want to make sure that you understand, as I come near to the end of my close, if there is no resurrection, my grandmama, my granddaddy, and their parents before them, their prayers were just futile exercises as a sign of their loss of contact with reality because of their misery. But I'm here to tell somebody that the Dr. Kings of the world, the Reverend Jacksons of the world, those who sustained us in the movement, many of them nameless, not really recorded, but the efforts of their work are evident in where we are today. They prayed. And if I were to just say this to you, prayer, it may not change your condition, but it will change you. Every time I pray and get up off my knees, I remember that I still have knees that don't have the calluses of those who prayed for me. I've still got room to do some work. You have room to do some work. We cannot get stuck in the malaise of the dysfunction of government, because there is a resurrection. I've never been to the tomb. I can't tell you where it is. All I know is that for years and generations now, our family has been sustained with the unshakable belief that on the third day, according to the writings of the text, the one that was executed on Friday got up. Somebody ought to say he got up. Tell your neighbor, I'm getting up too. Because you cannot hold justice and righteousness hostage to a grave, and you cannot hold the beneficiaries of their work held to an unshakable death. It's time to rise in America. And I just need you to understand that sometime you'll have to cry, and sometime you'll have to have restless nights. But somewhere I've seen it written that weeping, I said weeping, talk back to me, I said weeping may endure for a night, but joy, joy, joy cometh in the morning. This is where Reverend would say it's morning time in America. It's morning time for justice. It's morning time for liberation. It's morning time. Can I get a witness to say yeah? Say yeah. Say yeah. Now, before I go to my seat, y'all just hold on right there. If I were to put back on my Baptist hat, when injustice happens on Friday, just understand that you know the days of the week. You may have to go through disappointment on Friday, and you may have to endure it on Saturday. But tell your neighbor something happens when Sunday comes. They hung him on Friday. They ridiculed him on Friday. They pierced him on Friday. They buried him on Friday. But somebody ought to say early Sunday morning, he got up.
Never seen
international Saturday morning broadcast. We need your support. Here are ways to give to Rainbow Push Coalition. Text PUSH, P-U-S-H, to pound 41444 to support the work of Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. and Rainbow Push Coalition. When you shop, Amazon gives. Visit Amazon Smile and select Push for Excellence as your charitable organization by starting your shopping at smile.amazon.com. Education in America. We must address the crisis.
We're looking at Brown versus the Board of Education, May 17th in Chicago, major summit on equity in public education.
May 17th, 2019, Push Excel is holding an education summit at Roosevelt University in Chicago, Illinois. We are inviting educators, parents, and education policymakers and foundations leaders to join Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. in a State of Education Summit in Chicago. Join us for the Rainbow Push Coalition Citizenship Education Fund Annual Convention, June 28th through July 2nd. This year's theme, 400 Years Later, Repairing the Damage Done. Register today. Go to www.rainbowpush.org.
Get involved with the movement.
Somebody. I may be poor, but I am somebody.
Join the movement.
If you're not a member, become a member.
I am somebody.
Fighting the most important battles for freedom and justice for all.
You made us change. Oh, trying to bring closer.
Join Rainbow Push.
But you're not pushing me away.
Join the movement. Join Rainbow Push.
Big hand for Reverend Erie. Inspiring, informative message. And for these, there it is. Sing something. Come here and sing something. Brian, get on the piano.
Y'all stand up and let's have some fun. Get up. Hurry up. Come on, y'all ready? Let's have some fun. Let's say, hold on. Come on, put your hands together. I know you've been sitting down all morning. Just do like this. Just do like this. Wave your hand. Say, it's gonna be all right. Give me a little. Don't play with me right here. Okay? I like this song because it kind of sort of inspires all of us, and it goes like this. Listen. Yesterday, a man stepped up to me. He said, how can you smile when your world is tumbling down? I said, here's my secret. Y'all, when I want to cry, I take a look around and I see that I'm getting by, and I hold on. Change is coming. Change is coming. Hold on. Hold on. Don't you worry. Everybody fine. Hold on. Hold on. I said you can make it. Just hold on. Hold on. Everything. Some people like to worry. Yeah. And some like to cry. And some even like to run away from that pain inside. Y'all, but that's their business. You can do what you want to do, but if it don't work out, here's what you ought to do. You ought to hold on. Hold on. Your change is coming. Change is coming. Hold on. Hold on. Don't you worry. Hold on. Hold on. I said you can make it. Said hold on. Hold on. Everything. I like to say this again. Some like to worry. Some like to cry, and some even like to run away from the pain inside. I understand that's your business, and you can do what you
it. Hold on. Don't worry. Oh, yeah. Hold on. You can make it. I said, hold on. You know the friends. Now when the troubles of life, they weigh you down, just lift your head up. Yeah. And when the love you're seeking, it's hard to find. Don't give up. Don't give up. Faith. You keep going. Hold on. Your change is coming. Hold on. Don't worry about a thing. Just hold on. You can make it. Say hold on. Hold on. Hold on. Hold on. Hold on. Hold on. You hold on. Hold on. Hold Sing it again. La, la. La da, la da, la da, yeah. Hold on, you can make it, you can take it. Don't give up, don't give in. Hold on, don't worry about a thing.
Let's hear it for the Braxton family from Mississippi. Give it up. We dedicate this broadcast to you and your family today. Reverend Johnny Savory on a false arrest, wrongful conviction. Johnny Savory's in jail for 30 years, 3 years longer than Mandela. You heard the word about the Braxtons in Mississippi. Johnny said, we got to do something. Every time I tell you, Johnny, you say the Braxtons in Mississippi, do something about that baby. Give Johnny Savory a big hand. Thank you, Johnny. I want you to do three things. So number one, if you're going to come to the convention, is you want to register for the convention today, $50. Please stand. You want to register for the convention. Register for the convention today. Please stand. At the meeting the other day, a man got up and gave $1,000 to register some children. You want to register for the convention today? Stand. You register today for the convention. Please register for the convention. Thank you. You register for the convention today. $50 to register. If you're not a member of Rainbow Push and you want to join what we're doing, you want to join our movement for jobs and justice and health care and holding on and not giving up and not surrendering, you want to join Rainbow Push, raise your hand. You want to join, raise your hand. You want to join today. You want to join Rainbow. Look at the Braxton. You got some more Mississippi members here. Give them a hand. They drove all night long from Mississippi. Got to take the custom fried chicken in the car on loaf of bread. I mean biscuits. Now, last week we were overwhelmed with people here because we had children coming from college. Today, I need you to help me for a moment. Darius, will you do one of them with Darius? With Darius. Darius. You ready to do one of them Andre songs for me for a minute? I want, if you were sacrificing, give a you're sacrificing and give at least $100. We need your help real bad. This is how we're sustained. You will sacrifice. If you want to put your money on the swipe machine, John is here. You're sacrificing, give $100, please stand. You'll sacrifice. We need your help. Help pay for somebody who couldn't come. We need your support. You'll sacrifice and give it. I'm going up to drink and sip today if I can. Brother Maddox, more 100. Thank you, Maddox. We need your support. We need your support. Give as you are blessed to give. Give as you are blessed to give. Students, where you guys from today? Students, are you from Anderson? Anderson? Mila will take a picture in the back, but it can't go there, okay? We'll go to the back. You'll give at least $50. You give at least $50, please stand. You give at least $50.
Whatever it is, it won't let me.
The support. When we go to Mississippi, we're not charging the Braxtons a dime to go to Mississippi. You give that you're helping us go to Mississippi. We are going to Mississippi. We're going to send our leadership. So we ask you for money to help us do what we do. You give at least $50 stand, sacrifice for this family. Man, you wake up your 7-year-old child and I got killed, and no justice as a deterrent. That compounds the problem. You give at least $25 stand. You'll join today. You'll fill out a membership. Join today. Stand. You'll join today. You'll join today. You want to be a volunteer for the convention? You want to volunteer for the convention? Volunteers for the convention, stand. You want to volunteer to help with the convention? You want to stand. You volunteer to help for the conventions. You volunteer, stand. Meet Jeanette upstairs in the library. Just keep standing. You want to volunteer to help for the convention. We need conventions for the convention. We need volunteers. You always can do something to help. So everybody can help if they will. Come on in.
Ooh, I said it makes me love all my enemies. Oh.
And it makes me love all of my friends. And it won't let me be afraid to tell this whole world I've been born again. What is it
That makes me do right when I want to do wrong. Y'all, and when I'm down low, he gives me a song. Whatever it is, it won't let me. I just can't hold my peace. One more time, y'all. Listen, y'all. I said it makes me love all my enemies. Sing the Lord.
And it makes me love all my friends.
And it won't.
Let me be afraid to tell the world I've been born
fact, we intend to go to Mississippi. We didn't have justice for Amaya. We may have to march, face the dogs. We're going. Need your prayers. Reverend Todd, you pray for this family.
If you're close enough where
let us stand.
You can link up with your neighbor. Just take your neighbor by the hand and just slow that down just a little bit. We want to pray for this family that their heart might be encouraged, that we would ask God to give them comfort and strength. And even as we pray for them, we thank God that He spared us from having to experience that pain. But they will not stand alone with every head bowed and every eye closed. God, how we marvel at your goodness yet one more time. That in the midst of the unthinkable, you do the remarkable. How you've inspired and encouraged our hearts to know that from the dignified presentation of a mother in mourning, you've inspired an entire nation to get back to work for justice. We thank you, O God, that this mother stands like Mary did on that day when you sent your son and he gave his life. That she would not remain silent and she wouldn't get swept up in the hysteria of the grieving gone mad, but she remained focused. God, thank you for this Braxton family, for this father who stands in support, these children who are in their own innocence, grieving what could have been, but they are looking forward to what will be. Now, God, we believe that even out of bad things, you bring good outcomes. We believe that in the end, this family's voice will be heard and justice will be done. And so, God, we're not discouraged. We're actually determined that we're going to go down and speak truth to power, but not just for a casual conversation. We're going to speak truth to power about power. You've given us power to speak those things that be not as though they were. Thank you, oh God, that justice will roll down like water and righteousness like a mighty stream. Now, oh God, wrap your arms around us, strengthen our hands, encourage our hearts, clear our minds, but then, oh God, loose our stammering tongue that we will open our mouths and speak that which must be in the United States of America. And now, God, we give you glory for all that we've experienced in this place called sanctuary, for every prayer that's been prayed, every song that's been sung, for every dime that's been given. God, we thank you that it is all offered up for your glory. Now, oh God, we get to the important part, which is the amen. Now it's time to take it to the streets because Jesus did street ministry. Now help us to be serious about this work. We thank you for our leader, Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson Sr. Continue to strengthen his body and clarify his thoughts, that he, when he opens his mouth, speaks with the very voice of God. Now as we go forth from this place, never from your presence, we believe that we're connected. Bless my neighbor whose hands I hold. Encourage and inspire them to make a difference in the world, that when we reconvene, the world will be better than we find it today. And we declare it is so awesome to be your disciples that we cry out hallelujah and thank you in the name of your matchless, marvelous, magnificent, and risen Son, Jesus the Christ, we do pray. Let every heart say amen and amen.